So in this video I'm going to show you how to make landers in Adobe Muse and start basically getting in a workflow there in terms of exporting them, cleaning them up and so on. What I'm going to do is likely chop this video into a few different pieces just to make it easier for you to go to the various parts that you want to. Okay, so let's fire up Adobe Muse. Now Adobe Muse is very much like Photoshop in the sense that it's very visual, and if you know the Adobe suite and the tools, then the learning curve is relatively low. So I'm just going to make a completely random site. I'm not going to make any one purposed specifically for like the campaigns that will be involved in this 6-week AMC. It's just more to show you how to actually use it. So I want to click New Site. I always want advanced settings. Fluid width is fine. I'm going to make a lander that's kind of more for desktop and mobile together, so we'll do 1200. Min width 320. So if you are thinking of the mobile responsiveness of a site, what you need to vary the site layout with is the width of the device, more specifically the CSS width. So most smartphones have a CSS width of between 320 and 360. You can look this up. I can't, off the top of my head, I have a site that I like for this. I think it's devices, CSS widths. I can't remember the name. Where is it? It's not that, it's not that. Here it is, mydevice.io, devices. That is the one that I like. So here, for example, you can sort by CSS width, and you can see that most of the smartphones are 320 to 360, particularly the iPhones and so on around 320. So the actual physical device width in terms of the screen resolution is different. You'll all realize this if you have a phone, that the way it displays on their phone is very mobile orientated and is kind of different to what you would expect if the actual phone width was being treated like a desktop, right? So the actual physical width can be much higher, and it depends on the actual scaling ratios and the pixel ratios and so on. Essentially the density of the actual phone screen, which you can see here. Anyway, moving on. What I'm going to do is remove all margins and padding. I just don't like having these. I kind of like positioning everything myself. I don't like having a sticky footer. I just kind of want a clean slate. And we want it center aligned by default. So I'm going to make that. Here we go. Here's the new site. So this is kind of the dashboard where we actually generate different pages and link them together to kind of make a sitemap. But I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to open this. Here we go. So this is the basic page. Here I think this is kind of like a marginal gutter. I can't move it for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure what that is. If I go to page properties, I can probably see these various things. That's the padding that I've been setting. There's this gutter here, which is, I don't know, there as a guide maybe. I'm not sure if I can remove it or not. Who really cares? I don't think it's part of the CSS. The padding is quite obvious. It's basically this thing that I'm moving. That's changing the padding or the amount of space at the top of the page that's going to be left free and spaced from everything. And then this is the bottom of the browser. What is this? We have tooltips, bottom of page, drag to adjust minimum page size, bottom of browser, drag to adjust padding below page. So this is kind of your minimum height, and this would be the padding you put below that. So I'm going to want those together. Generally, I kind of like to space my design as is, but if you put these manual paddings in here, what you can kind of do is have all of your text content in this area, and then you can be sure that the page is actually going to move things for you. So if I make that, for example, and I fill it just to show the area, if I was to expand the content in my page, this here, the bottom of the page, is essentially the padding between my content and the bottom of the overall page container in HTML, which I can probably move up, or I can't anymore. And then this one here is the spacing to the bottom of the browser itself. I'm not sure I can't actually move that all the way up. I guess it's this gutter here that it won't let me move for whatever reason. Anyway, that's by the by, who cares? Okay, I'm going to move this all back so I don't have any paddings. And I'm going to create a basic page. So I'm going to make this page a little bit bigger in terms of the actual size. And what I'm going to do is just make a basic page, add some breakpoints, and we'll play with responsiveness, which I've never really done before, so you'll kind of be in the same boat as me. And then we'll export a number of pages and see what happens. So what I'm going to do is set the page background. For that, all I need to do is just change to this and kind of have nothing selected. So if I change the fill, that's the page fill. Stroke, you do not want, you don't really want anything around that. And then you have the browser fill, which is a little bit different. So let's say I set the browser fill to blue and the normal fill to orange, and let's put a stroke on just to show where that is. I believe I can preview this in browser, so we'll preview that. Yes, that's fine. There we go. So hopefully you can see how terrible that actually is. I'll just change this to be a little less painful on the eyes. There we go. So you can see the fill, the stroke, the browser fill. We really don't kind of want any of that. So what I'm going to do is get rid of the fill completely using that. Get rid of stroke completely using that. And I'm just going to set the browser fill to something. If I click this, I can change it to an image, or I can change it to a gradient. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to an image, I think. I have to add one. So let's find one. We'll find some random image to use, because using background images and figuring out how to have them scale in the browser properly is actually quite useful. What to do? I'm going to do cute kitten, because the internet loves cats. I'm going to go to images, I think that's images, and Thai, what do I want? I want one that's kind of large, so I'm going to use the tools. You can do this, David. Very large. I don't think that was what I wanted. Hold on, I'll just change this to English. Pro tip, that's down, okay, get off images. Down the bottom, I think. That. There we go. Okay, I want search tools, size. Okay, it was the first one, large. There we go. Let's use that one. That one is cute enough. That will suffice. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to my desktop, my Muse Lander folder, call this BG. Done. Okay, browser fill, image, desktop, Muse, BG. There we go. What I want to do is actually set the fitting to be scale to fill or fit. Now if you do scale to fit, what it's going to do is it's going to try and fit the entire image in there. So if we open up our browser, and we hit Control-Shift-M to go to responsive mode, you can see it's trying to fit in, right? It's always fitting all of the actual image content. What I usually would advise is that you use scale to fill, and then use that, which now gives us something more like this, where it's always trying to completely cover the screen. The difference in the CSS there is the background size. If I just pin this here. So if I was to actually inspect this and look at the background, we can find this somewhere. It'll be on wherever the background is set. Where are you? There we go. Background size cover. And then in this one, on the HTML, it'll be background size. No, it should be contain. Oh, I think it's probably up viewing only the current one in index.css, and I've kind of previewed and overwritten, so that would be why that is the case. Okay, now if we come back here, another few things to note, the scrolling property here. So if I have a scroll bar, see here how the actual background scrolls with the content. If I was to turn that off, then the background would be fixed and static. Where here I'm scrolling, but it's not moving at all. Hopefully you can see this little scroll bar here, and it's not moving. So that's the background fixed property. Usually you kind of want this scrolling. It depends on what you're trying to do. As for the position here, that's where you actually pin it. So it'll just control which part of the background sticks to which corner. I would usually use top and center. Okay, and also I would set a background color that is sensible as well, so that if the image doesn't load for some reason, then your page still looks okay. Okay, perfect. Now what I'm going to do is make a text box here. And I'm going to put some content. Let's be real developers and use lorem. Just find some placeholder text. There we go. It's the lorem is all in Thai, which is a first. I've never actually done that. That'll be because I'm not logged into my Google account, so my language isn't being automatically set. Where's my lorem? Down here. I want this one. Paste that in there. We obviously want to make it white so we can even see it. Perfect. Okay, now on the note of fonts, the Adobe Muse system is incorporated with Typekit, much like the other Creative Cloud applications. So you can kind of go to font over here and you can browse through your system fonts and standard fonts. So these are the kind of safe fonts with fallbacks for your design. So in the CSS you set a font and you also set kind of a sequence or a cascade of fonts as fallbacks. You can even use generic ones like cursive or sans serif and so on, like here, to make sure that they display in all browsers and you kind of control what fonts get used. In general, I like using web fonts. If we scroll through all these are all system fonts. If I want a web font, I have to add one from Typekit directly, which I can do here. So there's various ones. You don't really want self-hosted, I don't think. I would suggest using Google Web Fonts where possible. So if you go to, if you just look for, cancel that, Google Fonts, very easy to find. I would suggest using the Google Fonts store for most things because it's completely free, it's fast, and unlike Typekit, there aren't any restrictions on where you use it. Whereas with Typekit, you have licensing and you have to include the Typekit JavaScript and so on. It's very annoying when you have to, for example, whitelist your domains in your Typekit account for a specific JavaScript kit in order to use them. I just don't like using it. So what I tend to do is actually install one of these fonts and pick it, and then once the page is ready to go online, I just kind of swap in the Google font code. Okay, here I'm going to add a web font anyway. Don't know what these edge web fonts are. I haven't really used these. I guess it's something different. Let me Google that. What is that? Maybe they're kind of like the Google fonts and are a new thing. Edge web fonts. I'm sure we'll find out relatively quickly. I see free. Free, easy way to get started with web fonts. Totally free, no account required. Okay, I'm using these. That's what I like. Maybe there's things there like the Google ones, Open, Sans, Roboto, and so on. We can probably search. There we go, Open Sans, Roboto. Is that there? Okay, Lato. I'm going to assume that's actually Lato. Okay, cool. So that's great. So you can just use this. You can kind of take back what I said. Let's add a few of these, the main ones that are very, very common. I like cabin. Is that Nexa? No, let's go next door. Source, code, sans, and so on. What are the most popular ones? You can find that from Google. Oswald. There's another good font to have instead of like Impact and things like that. But we don't have it. What else do we have? Refrigerator, nope. You can kind of browse through and figure out ones that you actually want. Railway, Montserrat. Load, please. I'm just going to add all of them. Okay, that's fine. Let's add those. So what I'm going to do is wait for those to load. Again, I have to stress, you really want to use free web fonts that don't require an account and authentication and licensing, because it's just a huge pain in the butt to actually have that work. And if you, for example, changed your domain, you would have to actually change settings for your font kit in Typekit, or change the licensing, or change the embed code and so on. It's just extremely annoying. As well, the Typekit account has a limit in terms of the number of views, so you don't really want to have a situation where you're scaling and suddenly your fonts start breaking, right? And this is taking quite a while, which is a little bit annoying. I can't do anything until it's actually done, so I'll just accelerate to when that's finished. Okay, so that's finally done. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to change it to an edge font. There's various ones you can use. I'm going to use Open Sans in this case and use Open Sans Regular. There we go. I'm going to increase the font size a bit. So I wouldn't worry too much about like lander design and things initially. There's a lot to learn in terms of sales pages and typography and design and so on, but in this case, for your initial affiliate landers, just don't worry about that at all. The fact is, ugly often converts, and landers that do extremely well are often very, very simple and won't even use things like web fonts in that. They'll just use Arial and be very, very basic, not very pretty, but they work. Right, so I'm going to add in a headline here, which is going to be my headline here. It's very hard to write when you can't see. You always make mistakes. Okay, let's make this about 40, for example. We'll align it here. So you have these nice, I can zoom in as well. You have these nice guides for actually aligning things, which is perfect, exactly what I want. With Photoshop and all the Adobe tools, I really have to recommend learning your shortcut keys. So V is often select, T is type, escape gets out of that, H would be hand tool for moving around. So it's very easy to actually flick between things easily when you know these hotkeys. For example, I want to do an edit here, I tap V, I hold Alt and scroll to get in here, I double click to get in here, I hit escape, I want to move, I hit H and then I move, then I hit V, and so on and so on and so on. It's much easier when you know these shortcut keys. It'll accelerate your speed of usage quite a lot. There's also all these various panels around that'll be of use to you. The widgets library in here and so on here. I don't really care for this, so I'm going to close that group. Kind of move this up here a bit. It's up to you to kind of move things around and put them where you want them. Most of these little ones here like alignment and so on and transform are extremely useful, and I use them quite a lot. So not swatches, I don't like swatches. Okay, so go in here. Okay, so things like align and so on are very, very useful. So for example, let's say I have 2 of these and I put things here, and this one's a little separate. I want to make it smaller, and I want to align all of those. I don't waste time like moving them with guides and so on. I'm just going to select them all, hit align left, and then maybe distribute vertically so it distributes the centers. In that case, I'm going to have to actually resize this because it's based on the boxes, and that one as well. Select all of those, distribute, align. There we go. So yeah, it's going to try and it's going to make things a lot easier if you're actually trying to keep things centered. And of course, there's all these smart guides for when you're trying to align things together, like these centers and so on. And you can group everything if you so please as well. How to do that? Select all that, right click, group. Now they're kind of grouped together and they all move together, which is great. And then if you want to edit them, you just double click to get in here. Easy. Okay, I will just zoom out a little bit. Another shortcut key to know, Control 1 goes to 100% zoom, Control 0 tries to fit to screen. Fit to screen obviously being the more useful one to use in most situations. Okay, so I'm going to center align this. I'm going to move this entire group over here. One thing with groups that I found that was a bit awkward in Muse in the past was that if you are setting positioning, sometimes it got a little bit confusing, but what you can actually do is things like pin, rather than, say I want it so that when the page moves, the distance between, do I have a ruler tool? Not sure. The distance between here and here, here and here, and this point is always kept the same. You kind of need to get this box. You need to then go to, where are we going? Transform, pin to browser. You want to do that and have it pin up to that top corner. That's interesting. So actually it's setting the, say if I click this box here, right? And I want to do pin to browser, it's not going to let me, probably because I'm in a group. If I ungroup, Now it probably will. Yep, so it applied all of those settings to the group, which was great. So this will try and maintain those distances exactly. If you want to do that for lots of things, you can group them together, and then it's actually going to do it for all of them as I just found. So if I select all of those and I group, then I click spacing or pin there, pin to page, turns off pinning to use responsive positioning. I'm not sure what it's doing. So it's doing it to the page center, I guess, rather than the browser edge. I want to do whichever one you want to use, depends. I'm going to use pin to the top right, top left, and apparently I'm going to have to turn that off for responsiveness, so I'll turn that off now. Okay, so that's all cool. Then for a call to action, for example, I'm going to actually use text here and have call to action, and I'll show you why I use that as text in a little while. I'm just going to make it white. I'm going to increase the size a bit. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it bold. And then, yeah, you can't make the boxes too small vertically. If you do that, it's going to set the min height, but the actual height itself is going to be enough that it doesn't sort of clip it off. But with the width, it will chop it. Okay, so I'm just going to do, what am I going to do? To keep things consistent, I'm going to actually align these on the side. I kind of want to, okay, it's trying to align to the group, which is kind of annoying. So if I want to fix that, what I'm going to do is click that. Can I then move that? No, I can't. So I'm going to ungroup those. There's my guides. That's what I wanted. I'm going to make this the same width just because I can. Zoom out again. Select those all. I'm going to group them again. I can even lock apparently. If I lock them, then I can't edit them, which is actually very, very useful. If you've got some element which you keep accidentally selecting and you don't want to change it, like a big background div or something like that, you can lock it, which is very, very useful. In this case, when you want to unlock it, you're probably going to have to go to the layers panel, find it in here, this group, and unlock it. You usually can't sort of interact with it anymore because that was kind of the point of it all. Okay, so that's all I want for the moment. Actually, I'm going to move this down a little bit for various reasons. Yeah, so let's make this responsive. How are we going to do that? First of all, we're going to add a little square here as for various reasons. You'll see in a moment. Okay, that's our friendly square just for playing with. These guides are quite cool as well, which I do quite like. The fact that it gives you these guides to tell you when you're basically having centered spacing and so on. It's kind of like a smart ruler, which is quite cool. Okay, now I want to make some breakpoints. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to drag this along and see what happens. That's what happens when I resize this page, right? So it's all kind of focused on being responsive, which is why everything is trying to kind of maintain the layout in various ways. If you look at the separation here, you can kind of see it's percentage based, like it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller relative to the page size, which is quite cool. I quite like that. Everything for responsiveness should really be percentage based for things to actually maintain or not look stupid when you're actually moving responsively. Okay, what I'm going to do is actually save this first, so you can save it as like an entire design. So we're going to call it test design, and I'm going to preview it in my browser, see what it looks like. There we go. So that's the responsiveness at the moment. You can see that everything is kind of centered within this 1200 page width. So if I was to inspect this sort of page itself here, the core container of that page, that has a width of 1200 or a max width of 1200, which is why as I'm extending this out, it's not actually trying to fill the whole page because it's within its own container. Once I get down below 1200, which you can see here, that'll be when it starts resizing because I'm now encroaching on the max width. Okay, now let's make some responsiveness. I'm going to add a breakpoint. I'll add a very simple one by double clicking, or I think I can probably just click and drag and then click this button. That made it at 707. I don't really want it there. I'm going to do it at, so one of the common ones is 768. Frankly, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much, but I like 320 being an obvious one. and then my general rule is that you want breakpoints based on the common device widths. Shouldn't be based on gospel or like your bootstrap templates or anything. I mean, just look at the statistics on device widths. It's very, very obvious what should be used. And then between those breakpoints, you should just have a responsive design that scales and is fluid within variations rather than being extremely static. Okay, so I'm going to make that. And then we want one at 320. So I'm going to add one here, double click it, make sure it's 320, minimum width, 3 pages will not shrink beyond the minimum page width. So that's fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do, usually you can click between these to change. And now we can change the design on the various actual breakpoint views to fit. So I'm going to resize this group a little bit. I'm going to make this guy nice and wide this time just to demonstrate things. Going to move, oops, we want to get in this group and move this up, move this up, move this guy up, and you see that's changing the minimum height. There we go. Now if we continue scaling down, we can see how it changes, and you can see the breakpoint occurring here. Now if we get down to 320, obviously things are getting a bit hectic there, so we might move this, actually double click it, move it to like 400. There, so that once it gets to about here, it snaps. And then here, let's make this actually fit to the full page. There we go. Move this up. We can extend this out. I can hold Alt to kind of resize both sides equally. Move this here, align it. No Alt this time. Take this, put it here. And take this guy. And put him there. Now I might want to change the text, so in this case I might want my headline to be a little bit smaller down in this range. I might want this to be smaller, and I might want this to be smaller. And oh, that was 14. And let's make this text here as well pink. There we go. Okay, I'm going to save. What I'm going to do is now preview this in my browser. Hit Control-Shift-M to bring up responsive view. And I'm going to watch these breakpoints occur. There's one right there at 768. And then there'll be another at 400. There we go. You can see that changing. Now you can see here what is and is not affected in terms of the responsiveness. The actual widths and so on, and the positionings are. You can see the positions of the text changing. You can see the yellow square changing there, so its actual size and width. And then down here, you can see again the yellow square changing. The size of the text, that's a very good question. If we inspect here at full view, the text size is 14 pixel. If we then move down to here and inspect again, the text size is still 14 pixels. So in this case, the text size didn't actually change at this lower setting. Why is that? I feel like I may have missed something. What happens when we rescale? So the font size in this case is not being responsive. So that is something you would probably have to add yourself afterward. Maybe there's some settings to do that, I'm not sure. But in any case, that's something to be aware of, which is quite clear from the actual testing. Similarly, the color. The color color of the text did not change, right? So it's really just the positioning of the elements and the widths and heights and so on. Okay, I'm going to save that. What I'm going to do now is make multiple variations of this lander, and then we're going to export it, and I will in another video show you how to clean all of that up. So this is mainly just the Muse tutorial for actually using Muse and creating some things and the basic export. What I'm now going to do is find some more cats, because that's what we do here. Let's just search cats and then change to English. Okay, let's search for awesome. No, let's search for Xeno cats. I don't know if this will find anything. Okay, there's a Xeno cat. That's a Russian soft cat. That's one that I've actually seen before. I do like that cat. That's a cool cat. Perfect. I don't like him anymore. This guy, he's pretty stocky. We're going to save this BG2. We're going to take this skeptical looking Russian soft cat and make him BG3. And we're going to take, what on earth is this? Ribeiro. Okay, I'm going to view image there. That's an interesting one. I'm going to change this to BG4. Okay, bear with me. What I'm going to do is close this, and now here's my home design, right? I want to make multiple variations of this actual lander here. So I'm just going to right click it and go to duplicate, and then I'm going to duplicate again, duplicate again, duplicate again. I don't really care about the name, to be honest, and I'm just going to open this, and I'm going to change the background image. Then I'm going to open all of these. Can I open? Nope. Okay. I'm going to change that one as well. Oops. And this one. And then obviously delete this one because I don't really need it. And I'm going to save. So all of those pages now are various different designs. I can use Control-Tab to switch between them, which is kind of handy. And I could change these various designs as I please, right? Now what I'm going to do is maybe if I tried to preview the site, it's not really going to show me all of these because, oops, that's not what I wanted, because they're not kind of linked to each other. So this would be more if you have a menu system and you actually want to browse between them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finally export them. So to do that, what you want to do is go to export as HTML. Don't link FTP here and try and do that manually. Just trust me, don't. For the domain, I'm just going to put none.com because I don't care. I'm going to export to my Muse Lander folder. In fact, I'll make a new folder called exported HTML and select, away we go. And it's finished and it has exported. Now I'm going to minimize Muse and find that folder, which is here. And you can see my exported HTML here, and you can see these various pages, right? So if I was to open this, that's that page there, as beautiful as it is. And there's various other files here. So there's a Muse manifest, there's a sitemap, which you can see here, which you absolutely do not need. What is this? It's a manifest of what's involved in here. You've got CSS files where you'll have a global file that's kind of across everything. And then you'll have files for every single page, which is these three. And then you have this, which I presume is responsiveness stuff. Possibly, I'm not quite sure what it is on a first glance. Here is the global CSS, which will kind of be the largest in terms of what it has. In fact, looking at this now, the CSS in that produced by Muse has been cleaned up a lot. I mean, it never used to be this lightweight in terms of what it gives you. Then there's the images in here, and then there's JavaScript. So there's all this JavaScript in here that you don't really need. In particular, it's including jQuery items, which are kind of referred to locally, but you would much rather serve these from a CDN, like the Google CDN or CDN.js, which is something we'll get to in the next video. And yeah, so what I want to do now is basically go through and show you how to clean all of these up and basically open them, look at the page code, which could do with some actual attention, make it as lightweight as possible, and put in some kind of performance best practices and move from there. So I'll do that in the next video.